Hey, what's going on, everyone? In today's video, we're going to be talking about lead gen benchmarks you actually need to care about and not focusing on the vanity metrics. I see so many founders getting caught up on the metrics that don't essentially move the needle in their business. So I thought I'd make a video on this, which I think is really important, specifically in sales and lead gen. So again, most companies obsess over surface level metrics such as clicks, impressions, and even leads, right? But the real growth actually comes from measuring your pipeline that actually drives revenue, right? If you're focusing on all these little impressions, the clicks, essentially it's not telling you the full picture that's actually moving the needle in the business. So the problem with vanity metrics, right, is they're clearing, like it's killing your clarity, right? Even with us at the start, when we were tracking open rates, all these conversion metrics, right? We were having this beautiful dashboard or this beautiful data, but it wasn't actually contributing to our revenue, right? Like we were getting so much clutter and it was killing our momentum even, and it was killing what we should actually be focusing on rather than focusing on the little things that didn't matter, right? For example, again, click-through rates, number of leads, right? Only just specifically focusing on that. Impressions, email open rates, right? They're all great, but the reports don't tell you if the leads are actually qualified, progressing, or even going to be profitable. So the trap and why companies still focus on vanity metrics, right? Number one, they're easier to measure, right? While again, like I talked about before when we were building all these dashboards, they were great, right? But they weren't telling the full picture and actually telling us the truth. So internally we thought, we're doing something right. But the reality is it was giving us this false promise and this false hope, right? Number two, it looks great for your marketing department or your marketing team, right? It's like, oh my gosh, we got 3,000 leads, but how many of them are actually qualified leads, right? Sales qualified leads, and actually how many of them closed, right? How many of them booked an appointment? How many of them spoke with your team members? How many connections did you get, right? Like those are the things that you need to be measuring so you're able to iterate and adjust your lead gen campaigns and potentially your lead gen strategy, right? And another thing is, number three is they make your campaigns look scalable, right? More leads, more growth. That isn't always the case, right? The biggest thing is, okay, cool. We've gotten, 200 leads. How many of those leads are actually qualified and ready to speak with one of our team members, right? And how many of them actually paid up front or actually signed a deal or a contract, whatever your sales process might be. So again, it might give you this false hope of scalability, which is not always the truth, right? Another thing is agencies love it. I've seen so many agencies talking about all these metrics and numbers, but reality is it's easier to acquire cheap leads, right? Rather than actually focusing on the right type of leads that actually drive qualified pipeline. And number five, you're really hiding the real issue, right? It's kind of like you don't want to confront the issue, right? Because now your sales team is talking to unqualified prospects, tire kickers, or people that don't really have any interest or any intent, right? I love the word intent because once you know where a prospect's at in a journey, you're able to pivot them into different sequences or even be able to approach the prospect in the tonality or even the approach that they might be comfortable with based on the intent, whether they fill out a form or where the company's at, right? But yes, it makes your pipeline look full, but deals aren't really moving forward. So what is the result of all of this, right? Vanity metrics, they might feel like, again, I spoke about, they might feel like progress because they look measurable, right? Your dashboards light up, your report shows growth, you're feeling like you're winning, right? Been there, done that. It's not always the case, right? Most of these numbers are disconnected from what actually matters, which is qualified revenue opportunity, right? CPL dropping is great, right? Why don't you want to acquire or get leads at a cheaper cost? Of course. But in most cases, it's not always the case because you're always feeding your sales team or even yourself if you're a founder that takes all these sales calls, low intense leads that are just burning your time and just killing your morale, right? Your marketing team might celebrate the wins and the volume, but then sales is just down with all these unqualified prospects, and then leadership, or if you're a founder, you wonder, why isn't revenue growing? Like, what are we doing wrong here, right? Again, metrics don't always waste your budget, but the biggest thing, they'll waste your pipeline and just kill momentum, which is the biggest thing in business. So an example of a vanity metrics, right? Let's say you get 1,000 leads, you're getting them for $20 a pop, 18% CTR, versus how many of those are actually marketing qualified leads, how many of them are actually sales ready leads, and how many of those were actually deals, and what revenue did that lead to, right? 1,000 leads really mean nothing, right? How many of them are actually marketing qualified? Because you want to focus on their ICP and actually ideal client persona and situation that's directed to the audience that really resonates with you guys, right? And how many of those deals or people came into the pipeline that were sales ready and actually wanted to speak with someone or a representative from the company, right? And then essentially how many deals did you close out? And then what was the result of total revenue from that? here I created a vanity metric kind of a checklist. So if you want, you can pause the video and go through it. Highly recommend it, because this is something we've learned, especially in cold email, open rates, click-through rates, even running ads in different systems we built, and even with our sales pipeline and velocity. I'm not going to go through it just because I think you guys can get the gist of it for the vanity metrics versus non-vanity metrics and performance metrics. So feel free to pause the video and go through this yourself. So the metrics that actually matter in B2B based upon from our data. So there's going to be 5 metrics we like to specifically focus on. Number 1 is sales qualified leads, right? Why this matters is because it shows how many leads are actually ready for a sales conversation, right? When people are intentionally opting in or saying yes for whatever, service or product or lead magnet or, trial, they have some sort of curiosity or sort of intent, right? I know for myself, obviously, we do a lot of whatever marketing and sales. I know I'm not hopping into anyone's funnel if some sort of curiosity did not spark a pain in me, right? For example, if I see an ad of, learn how to do SEO, right? And I just opt in because in my head, I'm like, you know what? Like, we need to optimize for SEO because I've been seeing, for my clients, I need to get them better results, right? For an example, let's say if I was an agency like that, right? I would want to know how I can possibly use that and internally for myself, but also in my head, it sparks some sort of pain or some sort of trigger, right? So I could potentially maybe be ready for a marketing qualified lead, which I could be, but then how many of those can I turn into sales qualified leads, right? Being nurtured, right? Even being opted in. I don't like opting into random funnels, right? Just because the amount of emails I get. So understanding how many of your leads are actually ready for a sales conversation, because at the end of the day, I know if I want to buy, especially a high ticket product or service, or even investing in something, I want to speak to somebody who actually represents the company to the best of abilities. So I get my questions answered. And so we're able to go from there and negotiate potentially, right? So typical benchmarks for the MQLs is around 20-30%, I'll say, and then which results in your sales qualified leads being healthy. I like to say marketing, sales, it's a relationship. We all need to help each other, whether you're on the sales side, marketing side. If one of the sides are not really doing well, it just ruins your whole funnel. So make sure, again, pro tip, always make sure sales, there's an alignment so we can have better SQLs. Number 2, no one talks about this, but sales velocity. So what is sales velocity? Number of deals times by the average deal size times by the win rate, right? Divided by your sales cycle sales month, right? Why this matters is because it shows how fast and how effectively you're turning those leads into revenue, right? The benchmark obviously varies by industry, but always trying to increase your velocity without increasing your lead. Number 3 is lead to conversion rate for your customers, right? Like show your full funnel performance, right? Typically, this actually helps you understand your funnel. For cold outbound, it's 0 to 2%. Inbound leads is usually 5 to 10%, depending, could be higher or lower, depending on your funnel's built. And if your product is actually qualified and actually fits what they're looking for, conversions could be around 20 to 30%. So customer acquisition cost, AKA your CAC, right? Why this matters is because it tells you how efficient your lead gen campaigns at creating paying customers, right? If your healthy CAC is actually 1/3 of your customers LTV, that's actually pretty good. That's really good, right? So track your CAC by your channel, your outbound versus your content versus your paid ads or whatever. So you're able to know how much it is to your cost to acquire. Obviously, organic is much cheaper. It's more evergreen, longer. Paid ads, you're obviously feeding the algorithm to, you're paying for it, right? Outbound, especially cold outbound, is a little bit more intense in the sense of where be ready for making sure your offer, especially in the outbound, cold outbound side, is offer ready for your cold traffic audience, right? Number 5 is your LTV, right? So your customer lifetime value. Why does this matter, right? Of course, it helps you make smart decisions so you can see how much you should be investing into your lead gen system, right? Always remember, if your LTV is growing, that means you can afford to go a little bit more aggressive on your CAC, meaning your cost to acquire a client. So that being said, that is all for today's video. If you do have any questions regarding lead gens, your sales process, or sales systems, feel free to reach out via LinkedIn, or I'll drop my email down below. If you do want high intent leads to fill up your pipeline that are actually qualified and actually prospects that are intently looking for your product or service, feel free to go on my channel, or the link should be down below, and fill out the form. Again, we are very selective on who we work with just because we want to make sure we're getting you the best possible results for our customers. So that being said, thank you guys for watching the video. Have yourself a wonderful day.